This is the story of a happy family. We all start somewhere. Just like the marsh is an embryo and a womb. Well, we're given life, and then our Heavenly Father kindly tells us, this is the way, this is the path. And if we walk over into the creek or the quicksand, well, he says, no, go back. This is the way. Walk in this. This is the way. And each day is new. We can start over. We can change. It's called repentance. And we can learn to fly. And you'll know the truth, and it will make you free. And if you're in the thick mosquitoes, Micah can ride faster with Sasha so that she doesn't get bit. Then she can continue to live happily. And if she pays attention, she will always eat as well as the birds do. And she'll learn how to skim along, catch her own food, and still have time to enjoy her family, friends on the beach. He teaches us to fly, our Father does. He teaches us to soar. This is my dad, Warren Theodore Johnson, Sr. My dad was a wonderful dad. And then came the opioids. These are our boys, Ethan, Isaiah, Micah, and Noah.
This is my Uncle AJ. Every family has one, or two, or maybe even five, who take advantage of the love and trust of children.
I was just minding my own business. Fixed up an old house, saved it in Oxford, Mississippi. I was a child of the Southwest. My dad moved to Mississippi in 1961, pre-Civil Rights South. We had 4 beautiful sons. Married the captain of the state's football team, who was a dentist who bought the McAllister's Deli chain. Founder's dental office. That was Dr. Don Newcomb in 1978. Well, anyway, just minding my own business, homeschooled my kids, some of them after I got pregnant at age 41 with our little girl, Sasha. That's Noah with Sasha. And raised beautiful kids. Just minding my own business. So how did I come to get involved with these folks? I mean, I just took my kids to Sandestin, Costa Rica, and Spain. And then, well, there you have it. This is the first feature-length film that the Current Constitutional Applications Project has made. The Current Constitutional Applications Project teaches fundamental fairness in America to law students, continuing education for judges and prosecutors. First and 14th Amendment. Andrew Allbritton was an Angola prison guard. He said if he ever got in trouble, that he would never get caught because he had a lot of friends. He was quasi-law enforcement, being a maximum security prison guard at America's bloodiest prison. Well, Attica vies for it, but it's, anyway, Dead Man Walking, all that. Angola prison. And he committed aggravated sexual assault of his 8-year-old granddaughter while her parents were away. The mother is a neonatal nurse, and she was the mother of the sexual assault victim, the daughter-in-law of Andrew Allbritton, and she was asked by her mom to come home and help make end-of-life decisions for her dying father. And the sexual assault occurred while there were 3 kids being watched by the grandfather. FBI agent Nathan Songer went and told those aiding and abetting the fugitive that my husband and I were then currently state and federal witnesses to aid in his apprehension, which he was eventually apprehended, but only after the FBI agents lying to me, the sheriff lying to me, the prosecutor lying to me, were all put in the internet. The sexual assault occurred Martin Luther King Day, January 1996. The arrest was 6 harrowing, horrible years later. Mississippi from the Inside Out, a current constitutional applications project. All these folks that you will see in a moment can be heard, and you can edit it. The current constitutional applications project was begun, I was the director of it, when I was an adjunct instructor, which means I taught a night class, at Tyler Junior College. The featured players in Mississippi from the Inside Out are Andrew Allbritton, America's Most Wanted Sex Offender, the judge who's over all youth court judges in the state of Mississippi, police officers who committed assault and battery and theft, and a very nice man.
Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Hoggatt. Welcome to Freedom Song. The current Constitutional Applications Project is a cross-disciplinary educational project teaching fundamental fairness in America that was begun at Tyler, Texas Junior College in lieu of a final exam for American Government 2305, taught by an adjunct instructor, attorney Victoria Johnson. A host of prominent Mississippi public officials, including Mississippi Attorney General Jim Hood, Adams County Court Judge John NEWT Hudson, Adams County Circuit Clerk M.L. Vines, CASA worker Manfred Eit, and state and federal law enforcement officers, including FBI Special Agent Nathan Songer and Franklin Parish Sheriff Steve Pilot, now a Louisiana legislator, were then aiding and abetting an Angola prison guard, Andrew Allbritton Jr., a serial sex offender featured on the TV show America's Most Wanted, to continue his interstate and international flight to avoid prosecution for aggravated incest committed against Allbritton's own 8-year-old granddaughter. The Mississippi and Louisiana public officials named above were committing, covering, and furthering heinous witness intimidation and retaliation against federal and against state witnesses that were then aiding in the apprehension, extradition, and conviction of the Louisiana serial sex offender who died incarcerated. Professionals and amateurs, kids and old ladies all contributed to the success of the first current constitutional applications project, Welcome to Texas. All those combined contributions of ordinary folk and many prayers resulted in the apprehension, extradition, conviction, and incarceration of the sadistic fugitive Angola prison guard over 6 years after the assault, after the attempted suicide of the sexual assault survivor as a teenager.
Let's start with Andrew J. Allbritton, an America's Most Wanted sex offender.
Hello.
Hello, AJ?
Huh?
Hey, this is Vicky Hoggatt. Is this AJ?
Uh-huh.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm making it, baby.
Well, you sound pretty strong. I thought you were going to sound real weak. You know who I am? I'm Eric's wife.
Who?
Eric Hoggatt's wife.
Ed?
Eric. You know.
Oh, that's right?
Uh-huh. Maymay's daughter-in-law.
Oh.
Uh-huh. And,
Uh,
do you remember me, AJ?
yeah.
Yeah.
Vicky?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they've been running tests, and they just run my blood pressure, and it's 84/50.
Is that bad or good?
That's not bad. That's way low.
Well, I knew it was low, but I didn't know if it was low enough to be real bad. What I called you about, AJ, I hope you don't think I'm impertinent, but I've been kind of the go-between between the two families, you know.
Listen, don't even start none of that. I've had enough. I've listened to all of this stuff. That's the reason I'm in the shape I'm in. I do not want to start talking about none of it. You understand?
Did you know that Susanna tried to kill herself?
Huh?
Did you know that Susanna tried to kill herself?
Oh, hell no. She ain't nothing but a bunch of lies.
No,
I
sir.
know that.
No, sir. She was hospitalized for.
No, listen. Like I say, I don't want to hear.
Okay. Well, I won't talk about that. But the reason I called you is, I don't know if you know, but I'm a lawyer. Did you know that? And so I was going to tell you that I'm licensed in Mississippi, and that
That's the reason I said that. I don't want to talk to nobody about nothing.
yeah.
I ain't got nothing to say.
Well, I was just going to tell you. I don't know if you knew Murray Williams, the warden down at Angola.
Who?
Murray Williams.
I don't know her.
Well, maybe he was there after you were. But I was just going to say, you know, there are fairly nice options, you know, as far as he was the warden at Angola, but he's in prison now. But he said it's very nice. You know, it's where they put people who were prison wardens and stuff. But anyway, if you don't want to talk about it, I won't talk about it. But
Like I say, I don't want to talk about nothing. I ain't got nothing to say.
okay.
I talked to these people out here. They look at me out here, and further than that, no.
Okay. All right. Well, if you ever do want to talk to somebody, we're in.
I just need some of my money that Wilton owes me.
I'll tell him. Should I talk to him?
Because I'm going to need every bit of it when I get out the hospital.
How much does he still owe you? Do you even know?
I don't even know. I've been in here about 12 days now, or better.
No, but I mean, do you know how much money he still owes you?
Yeah, I know how much he owes me. He knows too.
All righty, well, if you need somebody to talk to, if you want to call us, we're in Tyler, Texas. If you want me to leave my phone number with the nurse, I will.
No.
Okay, that's...
Because I'll be out in the next few days. I probably will be. They run and check on my heart.
Do you think they're going to do surgery, AJ?
I don't know. They ain't talked about it.
All right, well, I'll tell them I talked to you, and like I said, if you want to call us, do.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Later.
Okie dokie, this is the niece of the America's Most Wanted sex offender, Andrew J. Allbritton, who committed aggravated incest against his own grandmother. Against his own 8-year-old granddaughter. And how Tessa Albritton figures in, well, you just need to interview her. She now owns the land, she and her husband, Tim Allbritton. Tessa participated in witness retaliation and intimidation. It was necessary for them to pull this off, to destroy the reputation of both any potential witnesses and also of the sexual assault victim and her family. The really sad part was this slander had to be against their own children, their own son, their own brother, and against their cousin. So Wilton Hoggatt spread about that Susanna was not A.J. Allbritton's granddaughter because she was a bastard, that she was not her father's child, which made, here's a picture of the father and the son that was slandered. But anyway, the father there, Wilton Hoggatt, said that, told this to his son. That was awfully terrible to say because it was so obvious that the young girl looked just like her dad's sister, who was the sex offender's daughter. The purpose of spreading around the illegitimacy rumor was the fugitive was charged with aggravated incest, and hence, if he wasn't really the grandfather, there would be no aggravated sexual assault. There would be no incest. Maybe the most cruel and sadistic rumor they spread about was in Texas, Donna Romes, who is Wilton Hoggatt's daughter, no longer living, spread about that it was probably her father who was molesting the little girl. So this is a picture of Donna Hoggatt Romes. She was Donna Hoggatt then, at about the same age as the little girl when she attempted suicide. So besides the incest problem, the Wilton Hoggatt also spread about to those who would listen, like my fourth born, Noah here, who then spread it about interstate to other persons, including me, that the little child had been utilized by her parents to just lie on her grandfather. Noah Hoggatt, you can interview him. He was the person who told me this trash. My fourth born. He is a lawyer in Baton Rouge. But like his old mother, he does oil and gas. I did, back in the day. And is training to be a court-ordered special advocate for children. Before we hear from Tessa again.
People to spread all around, a group of people to get together and spread around that my husband's a criminal and he can't
No one said he was a criminal.
My dad did.
I asked what he had done for me to be questioned, to be totally humiliated on the base, to be called in to say, what is your connection with this person?
And you think that's humiliating? You don't think it's humiliating for people to say that about somebody?
Well,
You're humiliated because they asked a question, but Eric's not supposed to be humiliated that they're spreading hideous lies about him.
Vicki, when Eric came down to Mama's funeral, we talked about everything. We cleared the slate. I thought that I had my brother back. I thought that everything was ironed out.
What about the little girl killing herself, Tessa? Do you want her just to go ahead and succeed?
What am I supposed to do, Vicki? I know nothing about AJ. That is none of my business. I don't even know these people. What am I supposed to do?
You're supposed to tell your father, Daddy, the little girl's going to kill herself. Would you please just talk to Daphne and tell her to give them the Do you know it's a crime, Tessa, what they did for 4 years to send him $80,000?
You don't know anything, Vicki. You don't know anything because they never sent him $80,000.
What did they send him?
You don't know what they sent him.
Well, how do you know they didn't?
I know that they don't have $80,000 to send.
How do you know that that's not true?
Because I know they don't have $80,000 to send.
Well, guess what, Tessa? Do you think AJ gave them the land that the deed shows in June?
I don't think that's mine or your business. That's my point. I don't think it's any of our business.
What about the little girl?
What about the little girl, Vicki?
She's going to kill herself, Tessa. And it's
You
like...
don't know that.
Yes.
You do not know that. And I believe that it would have died a year or two ago, and it wouldn't have gotten to the point that it is if the mother would have prayed about it and given it to God and decided that revenge was God's and not hers.
It's a crime, Tessa.
I know it's a crime, and I also think that it's wrong. Revenge is not ours, Vicky. It is not. The law is not in your hands or my hands.
If someone raped you today, would you just say, Tim, I got raped, let's give it to the Lord?
I believe part of it should go to the Lord. I think you should pray for comfort. Yes, I do. And when she calls me, that's exactly what I told her. I know nothing to help you. But I do believe that as a Christian, we should lead others to God and to his comfort that he can give them. Yes, I do believe that.
Don't you think it would comfort the little girl for him to be prosecuted?
Don't you think that that is the Lord's, that revenge is his?
Yes, I do. But as the Blues Brothers said, the Lord works in mysterious ways.
He does. He does.
And one of them is the Bible.
You need to not call my house about this again. I told the mother, and I'll tell you, we know nothing.
She doesn't think you do.
Nothing.
She wants you to encourage your dad and Daphne to cooperate so he'll be found and the little girl can have closure. He told her he'd hurt her if he ever saw her. If she told, she's afraid, she's ashamed, she feels guilty, and she knows that all her relatives, Tessa, support that they'd rather that she succeed.
I don't know anything about the girl.
I didn't say you ever did, Tessa. I never said you knew anything. I said that you could, like public opinion, encourage your dad. Plus, as a friend, if it were my father, I'd tell him, you won't get in any trouble if you help. You only get in trouble if you don't.
He won't get in any trouble, Vicky. The FBI already said they won't do anything to him if he has no further contact with AJ, and he has had none. Absolutely none.
No, they didn't tell him if he had no further contact. See, what he did is a crime. He didn't say, I did this. If he cooperated with them and said what they had done to this
He has
point.
done nothing further, Vicky. And what I think that you need to think about is that this family, that little girl's hurting, but our family is hurting also.
Ours has for many years, Tessa, and it's illegal, the things that have been done to our family. Now, see, you get very upset because someone speaks the truth to you. But
No,
our family,
I do not.
people have been lied. Did you hear that Eric threw Isaiah through a plate glass window? Did you ever hear that?
I don't know, Vicky. That, you know, right now...
Well, see, my parents are telling me that it came, not the plate glass window, but the thing about being a criminal from you. And you say, it really irritates me to be called on the telephone Sunday morning to be encouraged to help a child in need. But your family that's cried through the night for 5 years while people threw down credit cards, said, go get your minor child out of your home, or lied like when I called you and said, have you ever heard of any kind of abuse or anything? I think they're trying to get... do you remember me calling you when about 2 weeks?
I have heard nothing of abuse.
Okay, and do you remember me calling you about 2 weeks before Noah did his stunt and saying, I think Micah and Isaiah are trying to talk Noah into running away from
I know
home?
nothing, Vicky. I am over here. Do you not know that I am over here in my own little world? I work every single day. My husband works every single day. We have 2 kids, and we are not caught up in any of that. I hate to tell you, but we're not.
I didn't say you were. I just said, do you remember me calling and being concerned that Isaiah and Micah were trying to get Noah to run away from home? And I called Donna, and I called your parents. And see,
I don't know anything, Vicky, about any of that.
You don't know I called you up?
I do know that you called me up. But I also know you called me after the fact because I ran into you on the airplane. On the airplane.
Noah was on the airplane with us, Tessa.
Noah was on the airplane, and I had not talked to you before that point. I do know that. I ran into you where I had not seen you in years on the airplane.
You don't remember telling me I couldn't just call up your house and ask you questions and getting real angry?
That wasn't 2 weeks before that.
It was. When do you think it was?
What difference does it make, Vicky?
Well, see, it doesn't matter to you any difference if my children are encouraged to hate their parents or that they're getting drunk and throwing up.
I've never encouraged your children to hate anybody. We didn't even have contact with them for years.
I'm not saying you did, Tessa. All I called you up to find out is what the things that I asked you. And they are, the same way that you get real, know that it's unfair. If anyone even speaks to you, it's very unfair for people to spread around rumors that you're a criminal and not just tell your relatives that, but to tell the FBI that. See, Eric hasn't molested any children. He hasn't aided and abetted any children. But he's the one that the family is saying, this guy's a criminal. He just made that up to hurt our feelings because he's such a crummy father. And you don't think there's anything wrong with that Daphne would tell the FBI that?
I don't know what a Daphne told.
Okay.
You know, I don't know.
Well, I do, because I talked to the FBI agent.
Well, good, but I haven't talked to any FBI agents. I'm not a part of it. All I know is that my brother came to my funeral and said that bygones were bygones, we were all going to be a family again, and he has not lived up to his promise.
Well, see, it's difficult when people are saying that you did all kinds of criminal...
This happened way before the funeral.
No.
Way before it.
No.
But when he comes down, we all say, yes, come in, yes. And we've opened our hearts up to you. Come in, let's all let bygones be bygones. And all I can say is that when he went back, my dad or myself or anyone hasn't heard from him.
Oh, your father?
We are still here. My dad is still down there hurting because of the loss of my mom, and my brother has done nothing to cushion that at all.
He stayed there 10 days when he went to the funeral.
He stayed there a while, and he hasn't called him since, has he?
Yes, he has. They've talked several times.
My dad called Eric, and Eric said he really couldn't talk to him. He had to work through some things in his head. Well, that's great.
No, you know what? I was sitting right there. He said, you sound sad, Eric. And I said, well, I am. And he said, why? And he said, there's some things I can't get past, like that y'all would tell people that I made up lies about AJ. And your dad just changed the subject and went on. But see, when this bygones be bygones, they're not bygone. I still cry every night. Well, I don't cry every night, but I cry a lot. And your brother, for whatever you think of him or his religion, he worked very, very hard to raise moral, sane children. And those children, now that everybody's had their chance with them, now Ronnie says they have problems, and they certainly do. They have the same problems we tried to keep them from having from association with my dad.
You had them. You had Noah till he was 16 years old.
Well, do you think that would be nice if you had your child till he was 16 and then the relatives came in and said you were crazy and they needed to take your child away?
It went to the court.
Do you know who brought that court hearing?
No.
I did. Because MICAH and Isaiah said they were driving from Virginia through the middle of the night to come get my 16-year-old son. And so we were just frantic.
You threw the child out in the dark.
Where did I throw him out?
In Natchez.
Where?
I don't know. I guess a hotel.
Noah was asked to, you know how that all got precipitated is that my mother, I had just found out all those things, including the thing about the Air Force Base, and I called my mom from your dad's house because we were there visiting because we were hoping to live within an hour and a half or so of them as they were getting old. We were planning, we had a practice in Columbia to look at, a practice in whatever the little town is there, about 30 miles away. But anyway, and that's why we were there. And so anyway, after my mother said all these horrible things, I called up the guy on the Air Force Base. I called up youth court judges. I called up everywhere so that I could get the names of people who weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, that she could call and find out if those were terrible lies or were they true. And she didn't care if they were or weren't. And so I walked out there and I said to your dad, if you ever want to know the terrible lies that my dad is telling about your son, and he told me to be quiet. And so I said, okay, I just want you to know you're being had, buddy. And so I went upstairs. Eric came down, sat there, and told them all these things that my parents and the boys were spreading around, and they didn't care. And Eric said, I'm going to protect my children. I'm going to protect my wife. And we got up and we left. Noah was going berserk because my parents have a terrible effect on the children. The drinking and throwing up and so forth that's going on now, that's what we were trying to prevent. But anyway, and so we got in the car and we drove to Natchez. Noah was going berserk. And we said, Noah, calm down. And he was going berserk because we taught them to love both sets of their grandparents. My children, I think if you were objective, our family with all the kids sent presents and visited and wrote more often than on either side of our family, the grandchildren, because we loved our grandparents and we taught our children to love their grandparents. So it's just like it was very difficult for me to cut off association with my parents, but I knew it was having a very toxic effect on my family. Well, Noah was 16 and he had just gotten to the idea that, just one second, that he would not be seeing my parents till he for a while. But now here was your folks, and that just tore him up. And he was screaming, and he was acting ridiculous. And we said, Noah, stand out here, sit right here on the stairwell, right in front of the motel room door, until you calm down. Because he, I said, Noah, can you help bring in the luggage? Oh, yeah, and just, anyway. And he was going to call his brothers, and he was going to call his grandfather, and he was going to do whatever he wanted and this and that. And so the one thing that Eric did is Eric said, you go ahead, Noah. If that's what you want to do, you do it. And he said, I would, but I don't have a quarter. So your dad, not your dad. So Eric flipped him a quarter. And so with that, he went over there to the motel room thing, and I went over there and I said, Noah, come back. And by then, no, he was going to, his brothers were going to come save him. And so he got a phone card. I went over there and I tore it up. I said, Noah, come on back to the hotel room. And my dad immediately called the hotel, said, get him a hotel room. Here's a number, and my brother sent him his credit card number so he could order pizza. And we went up there, Eric could go up and talk to him, and he'd go back, and then Ethan would go talk to him, and oh no, and he was on the phone with Isaiah, and he was also, Isaiah was telling him that Donna had already agreed that she'd take him in, even though I had talked to her less than 2 weeks before, and they couldn't even conceive of such an idea, that Donna would take him in, that if the police came, that we'd probably try to call the police. If the police came, that he should run. And so in the middle of the night, I said, what is this? I was a youth court counselor. This is illegal. By statute, helping a child absent himself from his parents' custody without permission is contributing to the delinquency of a minor. So I called the youth court judge. He wasn't too happy about being awakened in the middle of the night like no one would be. I said, these people are on their way from Virginia. Noah told us that Isaiah said a fraternity brother was going to come over and pick him up and take him to the airport in Jackson, and that he had arranged his ticket and so forth. Now that was Noah being thrown out. So we called the police. The police said, you mean you got a husband and a great big son, and they can't go get him out of that motel room? I said, no, we can't touch him. We'd be charged with, they'd say we were abusive or something. So the judge said, put Ethan in front of the door, don't let him out. And he talked to Judge Hudson that night, and Judge Hudson told him, you stay here. If your brothers come to get you, I can issue a bench warrant anywhere in the United States. And he said, and I'll do it. And he left him in the motel room. But, Noah has been trained to say yes, sir, and to respect authority. And he said, yes, sir, he would stay there. And so he did, because he knew the power of the law was behind that they could not do that. And then so for everybody to show up.
At a hearing that was no hearing, we were allowed to have questions on cross-examination. I know
how it feels to be dying from the things that people have done, and that they all hold hands and do them together, and that they can ruin your reputation. They can ruin your... Noah told me 2 days ago that your dad had told him that Mike Allbritton and, your mom told me before she died that they were just after AJ's land. If your child was raped, and then you went to the police, and the next thing you heard is that your relatives were saying that Tessa just got her little boy to say he was raped so that she could get some material possession. You can't get any more slanderous than that. You can't get any more hurtful than that, especially when the little girl's in a mental hospital because she tried to kill herself. So what you do about it, Tessa, is up to you. And I'm never going to call you again. You don't have to worry about that. But as far as calling, do you have our phone number? You're welcome to call any time. And all this about what Eric doesn't do, everybody else, as my father was fond of saying, the road runs both ways. And anytime you want to call. We've called you a lot more than you've called us. But anyway, I'm not planning on harassing you. I just wanted to let you know why, and I told Tim why. He can tell you about that people could be a true friend to your father, and tell him, Dad, we know you never meant for anything like this to happen or be involved in anything like this, unless he did. And say, just tell them, and nothing bad will happen to you.
Right, like my brother's a good friend to my dad?
No.
Yeah, he's not.
Did you know that I wrote your parents about a year before Noah's stunt and encouraged them to cooperate with the FBI? Did you know that? I said, as your daughter-in-law and as a lawyer, you've always been known as fine, upstanding people in the community.
But they don't know where AJ is. I think that's what you don't understand.
No, Tessa, I know. Tessa, a year before, right at the time of Noah's hearing, your dad told Eric he was about to send his last payment So approximately a year ago, now about a year and a half ago, Daphne had an address. I mean, as far as we know, he said he was sending it through Daphne. So we don't know that either. But we do know that some people for many years knew where he was enough to send him personal objects and lots of cash. And so nothing would they're not going to put an 83-year-old man in the federal pen. If he went to him and said, I'm sorry, I messed up, I shouldn't have done this. This is everything we know. These are all the addresses we ever had, and he encouraged Daphne to do that, because I know that he told us, or he told Eric, that they told Daphne they didn't want to know where he was. But that doesn't keep them from being able to encourage Daphne, to say, okay, Daphne, where did you send the money? Because the man is out there, and he's hurting other little kids. Your dad told us that they had heard of another person, another little girl that he's supposedly molested. You knew AJ. Do you think he's not drunk driving and not hurting little kids?
I don't know what he's doing. And I've told you that. I don't know what he's doing or where he is.
I never thought you did. I know you don't. But I do know that there's a family that's dying because their daughter, who is pretty and kind and fighting, she's in therapy twice a week. Insurance pays part of it, but they have to pay $47 each time twice a week. They've done that for 2 years and off and on before that for the last 6.
But don't you think that somehow there has to be closure?
There does. It's called...
Even if they don't find him, there has to be closure.
There does.
There has to be something. And my point was that I don't know what to tell you other than the comfort of the Lord. That's it.
They pray a lot.
And that's what I told her. Is I don't know you. And I told her that I don't know you. I've never met you. I can't even remember. That's what no one seems to understand, is that these people were not raised as part of our family, Vicki. We don't really know them. I don't know them.
Well, their child was really in a mental hospital, and she's real, and she's 14 years old.
I can imagine that, and I can only tell you that I don't know where they are, and I don't know where they are. I don't know where AJ is. I don't know. My dad doesn't know, and I do know that I have a dad down there that's hurting for a son that has no relationship with him because of all of this crap. I do know that.
If I went around and told people that you'd taken one of your little kids and thrown him through a plate glass window, you couldn't work for the federal government because Tessa Hoggatt, Allbritton, was a criminal, that she'd hired a lawyer to get her a license in Louisiana to be a pharmacist because she's a known criminal, that all these things, do you think we'd be good friends?
Let me tell you this. All I asked was to my dad, I said, do you know something? Not that Eric was a criminal, that why I would be questioned when I went on an Air Force base. That was it, point blank. Now, all of the stuff that has been added on, I don't know about any of that. I do know that when I went in and I got called into an office because of something, whatever.
No one accused you of anything, did they? But see, you're real concerned that you would even be asked a question, do you know somebody? And yet here are families that they have been just torn to bits, their children raped, their children turned into people that are throw up over people. Did you hear about Noah throwing up all over Len's house? See, that would do something to you, Tessa, if you raised your children the best you could to be Christian people who believed in God, had an accountability, and then, the last time, when Eric went down there for the funeral, Noah came right up in front of Eric as if he didn't exist and wasn't his father, and asked your dad, could he go fishing? And I heard that he asked to borrow your car, and you said no before he took my car. Caused $2,300 worth of damage to my car. Went out and got drunk, and then when anybody says, are you going to, Noah, do you feel any accountability to, maybe get a job and pay for what you did? Oh, no. And the judge, according to Noah, said that they understand, that high school boys go out and get drunk. Well, that's fine if it's their high school boy. But see, our high school boys didn't go out and get drunk. And so for it just to be everybody's...
They were slipping out before they ever left your house, Vicki.
Oh, I know kids buy liquor, and I know this and that. And I know some very, very serious things, like my dad suggesting, he came over to where missionaries are trained and was mocking all around about our guide. He said, so I guess if you had a Playboy, they'd throw you out, because he always promoted that, if you don't let your kids watch R-rated movies and you don't let them get pornography, that you're just mean and dirty, rotten parent if you don't let them get drunk underage. You're a mean and, real men look at naked women and get drunk. And so anyway, so Noah, I don't know if you heard about this, finally got so addicted, well, I'm not even, horrible things, criminal things. And those things, Tessa, it's not right for I don't care if they called your family or who, for people like my brother did to supply liquor to the point of people throwing up at age 17 and 18. That's wrong. It's criminal.
It is wrong, and I'm not going to condone that.
Right.
I'm not going to condone any of that.
Okay, well, there's no use us talking because you can encourage your dad to help the family or you cannot, but that's totally up to you. So anyway, goodbye.
You heard Tessa saying something about the judge. Well, here he is. John Newton Hudson, most prominent judge in the state of Mississippi. And this was his clerk. Only in Mississippi, Marion BINKY Vines, circuit clerk of Adams County. Wow. Indicted, I think, 13 felony counts of embezzlement, something like that. We'll let someone else narrate this part. Non-adjudicated, pled guilty to 3, and continued serving as Adams County Circuit Clerk and ran for re-election. Anyway, he threatened the sexual assault survivor, her mom, and me, an attorney who's been licensed since 1978 in Mississippi. First job out of law school was working for the State Reapportionment Committee, the state legislature, to document what happy campers black public officials in the state of Mississippi are. Anyway, Mr. Vines threatened the sexual assault survivor, her mom, and an officer of the court. A lawyer, while we were in his office, only for the mother to have her signature notarized to a petition for disclosure and release of records. Anyway, he said he hollered at us that he would call the sheriff to have us removed. And what was really ironic was eventually, I believe, some law enforcement agency came and removed him. The sheriff never did come remove us. There were a nice constable named Jason. There was a tall, black something at the courthouse that Jason warned me, he will hurt you. But apparently he didn't meet the requirements of his non-adjudicated 3 guilty pleas to stealing And, well, that was that. Former Adams County Circuit Clerk Binky Vines, well, his name is Marion L. Vines, but he goes by Binky, and he eventually did send a very large fellow who jerked the camera off my neck, and you can watch him do that on the current Constitutional Applications Project. The person that ordered the camera being jerked off my neck so I could not document civil rights violations was this gentleman. Well, sometimes he's gentle, and sometimes, well, some of his actions aren't so gentle, and some of his actions aren't so legal. John Hudson ordered the circuit clerk, and specifically, you can hear her admit this on audio tape on Mississippi from the Inside Out, the website, currentconstitutionalapp.com, that John Hudson said for the circuit clerk to charge $25 a subpoena, not to serve them, but to issue them. And they received that money across state lines, over $400. But then John Hudson told them, do not issue the subpoenas after all, after calling me and telling me, yes, the subpoenas were being issued. Interview lawyer Micah Hoggatt, he called me. He was not a lawyer then, and told me that the fugitive had died. And so I related that to the family of the sexual assault survivor, and they're more streetwise than I, and they immediately doubted that that was true, and it wasn't true. I also reported that information about the fugitive being dead and that they knew where he was buried to Special Agent Nathan Songer. Well, he wasn't special back then. Agent Songer was an agent with in MONROE, Louisiana. But anyway, he calls Micah Hoggatt here, charmingly posed with his frag grenade. And I get this frantic phone call. The FBI called me. I want to be an FBI agent. I'm not talking to him. I'm going to get a lawyer. So anyway, but you can interview him and he can tell you all about that. So, what does the Mississippi Attorney General have to do with the America's Most Wanted sex offender, Micah Hoggatt, Noah Hoggatt, Isaiah Holden Hoggatt, and Judge John Hudson? Well, I'll tell you. Jim Hood, the Office of Attorney General, participated in witness intimidation, retaliation, obstruction of justice, is believed to have advised interstate extortion, and but you, plain lawyers, can interview these folks and find out exactly what happened. You can look on the Current Constitutional Applications Project website, currentconstitutionalapp.com, and you can play along. And who is the state's law enforcement officer who should be prosecuting intentional deprivation of rights under color of law, but who also serves as the defense counsel or representative for all Mississippi state officials who are committing crimes? They're not supposed to, but they do. Judges that violate people's civil rights, policemen that jerk the camera off your neck while you're documenting civil rights violations, circuit clerks that believe the judge and then don't. Go to Mississippi Inside Out on the currentconstitutionalapp.com and listen to them. It's very important that this movie be made because I represent the estate of Michaela Hill, a minor child deceased who died in alleged Mississippi Department of Human Services custody, who was deprived of every constitutional right, just as was done in this family. First Amendment constitutional rights are freedom of worship, press, assembly, and the right to petition your government for the redress of grievances. 14th Amendment, rights of due process and equal protection of the laws, are the right to a hearing before the government interferes with anything you own or custody of your children. All Americans have the right to a hearing, effective assistance of counsel, the right to subpoena witnesses, the right to cross-examine witnesses, and the right to appeal. Mississippi from the inside out seeks criminal and civil prosecution of former Adams County Court Judge John Hudson, pictured here, and Lee County Court Judge Charlie Brett. Both of these fellows made appeal impossible by refusing to release the record. John Hudson just told the circuit clerk not to send it. When the designation of appeal was made, the Mississippi Rules of Appellate Procedure prohibit any judge or anyone from limiting what record you can send to the Mississippi Supreme Court. Judge Charlie Brett was even more amusing. Well, neither one were the least bit amusing, but Judge Charlie Brett told me in open court on the record, well, not open court because it was closed, it was a youth court hearing, but the child, MICAH, had died, and Charlie Brett told the lawyers for the hospital, North Mississippi Medical Center, and for neonatologist Brian Darling, who had been subpoenaed. Their two lawyers showed up to move to quash the subpoenas. So there has never been any sworn testimony by any medical expert in MICAH Hill's case, even though her parents were falsely charged with medical neglect because they would not consent to their less than 1 pound child being injected with non-sterile body fluids, mostly blood derivatives, because she had no immune system. She was what's called a micropreemie, and she died of sepsis, which after you inject 7 people's non-sterile body fluids is a very likely outcome. But anyway, Charlie Brett told me on the record that I have not yet accessed that if the hospital and doctors did not want me to see the record, wherein he pretended to alter custody of MICAH Hill to the Mississippi Department of Human Services or Lee County Department of Human Services, that he could guarantee me that I'd never see it. You can't do that. It doesn't matter how secret it is. John Hudson just told all the people under him, M.L. Vines, the circuit clerk that was pictured earlier, not to send it. And finally, the Supreme Court said we have to have some originating document in a case involving our family, wherein after we talked to FBI agent Nathan Songer and let him know what we could testify to, which was admissible because it's called an admission against interest exception to the hearsay evidence rule. Agent Songer went and told Wilton and May Hoggatt that we'd offered to serve as witnesses. The reason we offered to serve as witnesses is we knew we could not ask our Heavenly Father for help, for protection for our family from a drug-addicted and alcoholic grandparent unless we did everything we could do to help the family of the sexual assault victim of Andrew Allbritton. So you wonder, what does Wilton Hoggatt, who's no longer living, have to do with Mike Moore, who actually was in the movie about the Master Tobacco Settlement, the former Mississippi Attorney General, and the current Attorney General, Jim Hood, for the last 20 years of his being the Attorney General, from the time he was a young man till the time he was an old man who recently ran for Mississippi governor. Well, I'll tell you. The Mississippi Attorney General's office represents public officials for the state of Mississippi, and they were the attorney for the appellant. Meaning the Mississippi Youth Court, John Hudson. They're also the attorney for judges, like Charlie Brett. So this judge, John Hudson, decided he was going to join in the witness intimidation, retaliation, intimidation. FBI agent Songer decided he was also when he went and told May Hoggatt, the sister of the sexual assault perpetrator, and the person who defends these people, her husband, who Wilton Hoggatt, intentionally joined in the intimidation and retaliation by pretending to alter the custody of their 16-year-old son after his sophomore year in high school in New York. To guess who? Well, to this man, Wilton Hoggatt, who was enraged because the FBI agent had come and told him that my husband and I had offered to serve as state and federal witnesses to aid in the apprehension of Andrew Allbritton. So while Andrew Allbritton, America's most wanted sex offender, was at large, armed, extremely dangerous, and had threatened to hurt the little girl, FBI agent Songer warned the folks who were in contact with him and aiding and abetting by financing his interstate flight to avoid prosecution. But Agent Songer did much more. Agent Songer, besides telling these folks what kind of son would turn his own father into the FBI, Agent Songer listened to the tapes that the parents of the sexual assault survivor and I made. When the child was in Our Lady of the Lake Hospital on suicide watch in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I told her, give me 2 weeks, Susanna, because I knew all of these people would proudly admit their part, and they would admit to every element of each crime they had committed: breaking and entering, burglary of an occupied dwelling, interstate kidnapping, theft, forgery, perjury. So I called these different people and we recorded them. And then these recordings of the father and mother of the sexual assault survivor and of Wilton Hoggatt. And even the sex offender himself admitting, saying, tell Wilton to send the rest of the money he owes me, were sent to Agent Songer. And Agent Songer kept saying, what, me? You sent me something? But anyway, police do not like to be policed. Prosecutors don't like to be prosecutors, and judges certainly don't like to be judged. And so, besides throwing these things out, these recordings, he heard Tessa Albritton say the FBI agent said they wouldn't get in any trouble at all for sending the fugitive money. Well, Agent Songer decided he would join the witness intimidation. This just made him very angry. And so he told the mother of the sexual assault survivor, because he knew she was in contact with me, that May and Wilton Hoggatt told him that they had sent money, that they had sent the fugitive money in New York. FBI agent, special agent now, Nathan Songer, knew that we lived in New York. And they knew that the fugitive was armed and dangerous, and that this would it was intended to intimidate us, to stop this recording of FBI agents and so forth. Okay, this is Dan Ware. He was an FBI special agent, also an attorney. He went all over the U.S. and beyond, to include the United Arab Emirates, while working on the investigation of the 9/11 terrorist attack. He had a key role working with the Department of Justice, investigating allegations of campaign fundraising abuses by the 1996 Clinton Chinagate campaign, for which he was pictured and quoted on the front page of the USA Today newspaper while testifying before Congress. Okay, he seemed like an awfully nice fellow, unfortunately. Even though he was just scandalized that Attorney General Janet Reno said that's the way things work when he could not get a subpoena to get hold of the documents while he watched the people carry them out the door, take them off and destroy them, when it was an FBI agent accused of wrongdoing. Well, the same standards didn't apply, but it was scandalizing to me. So we're trying to get these FBI agents, including Ken Kaiser. You keep telling the superior this is what's going on. Nathan Songer is warning the folks currently aiding and abetting the fugitive, sadistic sex offender. And they just, well, The cutest thing, or the cutest FBI agent, was Ken Kaiser, who told me if I was recording FBI agents that I was committing a crime. Now, most people, if an FBI agent told them, especially in higher up, he eventually became the assistant director of the big FBI before he retired and was indicted on another totally unrelated matter. But anyway, most people would be intimidated. They probably would stop. And so Ken Kaiser joined witness intimidation and retaliation. So the average American citizen would think, well, if he said that's against the law, maybe the FBI agent will come arrest me one day. But, which is not a good thing if you're a lawyer to be arrested by the FBI. But the cute thing was that Ken Kaiser said all that on audio tape while he was being recorded. So you try to figure out, who is it that's busting out your van window and flattening your tires? On a brand new van also, I went to lunch in St. Francisville, Louisiana, where Angola Prison is located, to get information on the sex offender when he was a fugitive, because he had been disciplined for prisoner abuse involving unnatural sex acts. And when I came out from lunch, my van tire was flat to the ground. I filed police reports on the 2 tires being slit in Jourdanton, Texas. I filed police report in St. Francisville, Louisiana. I filed police reports in Tupelo, Mississippi about continuing threats by telephone. One hates to think that this could be a family member, but it was the family members, especially that it could be one of your own children that you had taught all about the creation and everything you knew, gave him everything you had, and that once really appreciated beauty and won awards for the Police Benevolent Association, and you fed them food. You didn't just feed it, you grew the strawberries and you grew the raspberries and blackberries and taught them how to go out to the peach tree and pick the peaches and make a homemade pie. I mean, they could fly. But according to Donna Hoggatt Rome's, under her tutelage, she didn't have that, but under the folks that were defending and profiting from the interstate flight to avoid prosecution of an America's Most Wanted sex offender wanted for aggravated incest, if you didn't join the, persecution, hatred, anger, criminal activity, well, you just weren't a real man. And Donna Hoggatt Rome said that these 3 kids that once were so happy and kind had become vicious, sadistic liars. So, as we tried to investigate who was doing what, my beloved brother Craig, who had given this fellow, Isaiah Hoggatt, a credit card and said, go get MICAH from 172 Cornwall Hill Road, Patterson, New York, and bring him to Danville, and then who transferred him to Wilton Hoggatt, the person who was currently then sending money to the America's Most Wanted fugitive wanted for aggravated incest committed against an 8-year-old. My brother Craig said that even though MICAH was 80 miles away from where we were living, hiding out in brush country in our own little witness protection program in South Texas, my brother Craig thought if anybody was bashing out windows and flattening tires, and that he thought it would be Isaiah, who considers himself a leader among men for sure. But one of these fellows can probably tell you the answers, so play law. MICAH Hoggatt, WINNSBORO, Louisiana. This was a picture of him in Brazil, where they had asked the druggies could they borrow their machine gun and frag grenade to take pictures. Isaiah can be found down near Lafayette, Louisiana. And Noah in Baton Rouge. Episode 1, Mississippi from the Inside Out. In Episode 2, you will hear from FBI agents Nathan Songer, Cal Seig, Dan Ware. You'll hear from the judge himself. You'll hear from these three young men. And copyright Bay Israel, Chichikar Keller Iglesias, 1999-2020, all rights reserved.